In today's lesson, we're going to work on Module 1, Lesson 1. In that lesson, we are going to reason concretely and pictorially using place value understanding to relate adjacent base 10 units from millions to thousands. That simply means we're going to use a place value chart to explore the relationship going to the right of the place value chart and moving to the left on the place value chart. Let's start with the fluency. Our first fluency is renaming units. So if I gave you 10 ones and asked you to rename it to tens, you would tell me that 10 ones equals 110. Okay, let's try another. If I gave you 20 ones and asked you to rename it to tens, you would tell me that 20 ones equals 2 tens. If I gave you 30 ones and asked you to rename it to tens, you would tell me that 30 ones equals 3 tens. You should start to see a pattern. If 10 ones equals 110, 20 ones equals 2 tens, 30 ones equals 3 tens, then you should see a pattern that 50 ones would give me 5 tens. 110 ones would give me 11 tens. So notice changing from ones to tens, all I simply did was take off the 0. Our next fluency is decimal place value. We're going to start, we know our decimals right here, and we learned in 4th and 3rd grade that on the whole number side, which is on the left, our first whole number place value is the ones place. Right in front of it is the tens place. Right in front of it is the hundreds place. And right in front of it is the thousands place. Notice the pattern. The further I move away from the decimal, the more zeros I add. Notice no zeros in the ones place. 1 0 in the tens place. 2 zeros in the hundreds place. 3 zeros in the thousands place. Now let's get into the decimal side. The decimal starts with the tenths place. Right behind the tenths place is the hundredths place. Now with the decimal, you'll sometimes see it written in different forms. I started with the fraction form. Tenths is 1/10. But you might also see it in standard, which would simply be 0.1. Notice my 1 is in the first place after the decimal. For the hundredths place in standard form, I would write 0.01. Notice that 1 is in the second place after the decimal. My zeros also help me with my places. 1 0, first place. 2 zeros, second place. Now let's start creating some numbers. I'm going to start with the whole numbers. I'm going to draw 3 discs. We see that there are 3 discs in the tens place. So I'm going to write the 3 in the tens place. I do not stop with my number until I get back to the decimal. Do we see any ones? No. So I put a placeholder in there. I am now back in my decimal, so my number is 30. Let's try another. Let's say I had 4 in the tens place. In the tens place, I would write the 4. Notice I am not at the decimal yet. In order for me to get there, I need a 0. So that would give me 40. Now let's switch over to the decimal side. I'm going to put 3 discs in the tenths place. And I ask, how many tenths do we have? Well, we see that we have 3, so in that place value, I'm going to write a 3. Notice right in front of my 3 is the decimal. So my number should look like decimal 3. 3 tenths. Okay. Let's try another one. Let's say we put 6 discs in that place value. How many discs do we have in the tenths place? 6. so I write 6 in the tens place. Once again, I'm already at my decimal, so there's my number, 6/10. I can either write it decimal 6, or I can put my placeholder and write it 0.6. Both are equivalent, which means equal. Okay, let's say we had 2 discs in the tens and 3 discs in the hundreds. I start by asking, how many do we have in the tens place? Well, I see 2, so I write 2 in the tens place. How many do we have in the hundreds place? I see 3, so I write 3 in the hundreds. Notice there's no empty places to my decimal. Remember, I can always put that 0. So my number would be 23 hundredths. Let's try one more. Let's say I had 5 in the hundreds place. How many tenths do I have? Notice there's nothing there, so I do need a 0. How many do I have in the hundreds place? Well, I see 5, so I write a 5. Remember that decimal is in the front of the decimal, so my number is 5 hundredths. Okay. Let's move on to our concept. We're going to start by dividing single units by 10 to build the place value chart to introduce thousands. Okay, so I'm going to start with the whole number 1 million. And if I have 1 million, I know that I simply put the 1 in the millions place. That's just like the fluency we just did on the decimal place values. If I have 1 million, my 1 sits in the millions place. If I want to divide it by 10, dividing takes my digits to the right, because if you notice, when I move from place values to the right, they get smaller. Thousands is smaller than 10,000s. Hundreds is smaller than thousands. Tens is smaller than hundreds. So anytime I'm dividing, my digits are shifting to the right to get smaller. So if I'm dividing by 10, all I have to do is shift my 1 to the hundred thousands. So I know that 1 million is equivalent to 10 hundred thousands. So 1 million divided by 10 will give me 100,000. Okay. Let's try. I'm gonna leave that on there. So let's start with this 1 in the hundred thousands place. If I want to divide it by 10, remember on the place value chart, when we divide by 10, we are shifting to the right. So to make my 100,000s divide by 10, I simply shift that 1 to the right, which takes it to 10,000s. So that tells me that 100,000 divided by 10 is 10,000. Now, I'm going to take that 1 in the 10,000s place and I'm going to divide it by 10. And remember our pattern, whenever we divide by 10, we shift to the right on the place value chart. So my 1 is going to shift, and now I have the 1 in the thousands place. Notice the only thing happening to my number is it's shifting to the right one time. So when millions divided by 10, it's shifted to the hundreds place. When hundreds divided by 10, it shifted to the 10,000s place. When 10,000s place divided by 10, it shifted to the thousands place. And I can keep going with it. 1,000 divided by 10 would take that 1 to the hundreds place. 1 in the hundreds place divided by 10 takes that 1 to the tens place. You should start to see the pattern. I am literally shifting my digit 1 place to the right when I divide by 10. I can keep going till I get to the decimal. 1 in the tens place divided by 10 takes me to the ones place. 1 in the ones place divided by 10 crosses me over that decimal to the tenths place. 1 in the tenths place divided by 10 takes me over to the hundreds. Remember, to get back to that decimal, I need a 0. Now we're in the decimal side of the place value chart. But notice nothing has changed from the whole number to the decimal. Anytime I divide by 10, I'm shifting to the right 1 time. Now if I take my hundredths place and divide it by 10, that's going to take that 1 over to the thousandths place. Remember, we have to get back to that decimal. So 1,000th looks like that. Decimal 0, 0, 1. So remember my pattern. Whenever I divide by 10, I'm shifting to the right 1 time. Okay? So now let's talk about multiplying. Well, think about it. If division shifts me to the right, multiplication has to shift me to the left, because multiplication and division are opposites. So if division is taking me right, multiplication is going to take my digits left. And notice, as we move to the left of a place value chart, the place values get bigger. Tens is bigger than ones. Hundreds is bigger than tens. Thousands is bigger than hundreds. So moving to the right makes my numbers larger. So let's start with 4/10. Notice, to put 4/10 on the place value chart, all I had to do was put my 4 in the tenths place. I'm going to multiply it by 10. Well, we just learned that division takes us right. So that tells us that multiplying takes us left. So now my 4 is going to shift to the left, and it's now in the ones place. So I know that 4/10 times 10 equals 4 ones. Now I'm going to take my 4 ones and multiply it by 10. Remember, multiplying shifts to the left. So that's going to take that digit to the left, which is now in the tens place. Notice I'm no longer next to the decimal, so I need that place value to get me next to that decimal. So that tells me that 4/10 or 4 ones divided or times 10 gives me 40. Once again, anytime we multiply by 10, we are shifting left 1 time. Okay? Let's try 400ths. So to make 400ths on my place value chart, I simply need the 4 in the hundredths place, and I'm going to put my placeholders. There's my 400ths. 4 is in the hundredths place. And I'm going to multiply by 10. Remember, multiplication takes my digits to the left. So, if I have 4 in the hundredths times 10, my 4 now moves to the left and goes to the tenths place. I'm already at my decimal, so I'm just going to put a 0 in my ones, just for good measure. So I know that 400ths times 10 gives me 4/10. Notice all I did was shift to the left 1 time. Now let's try multiplying 4,000ths. To put 4,000ths on my place value chart, I am simply going to write the 4 in the thousandths place. I'm not at my decimal, so I need zeros to get me there. There's my 4,000ths. The 4 is sitting in the thousandths place. If I need to multiply by 10, as we've talked about, multiplication takes my digits to the left. And I'm multiplying by 10, so I'm going to move it 1 time. So instead of being in the thousandths place, it's going to shift to the hundredths place. I'm not at my decimal, so I need a 0 to get me there. And I just like a 0 in the ones place. So that shows me that 4,000ths times 10 gives me 400ths. Okay, so remember our pattern so far. On the place value chart, when we divide, we are moving to the right. And when we multiply, we are moving to the left. All of our problems so far have been using the power of 10. We've only had to shift one time. Our next problem, we're going to see what happens when I'm using 100 and 1,000. I'm going to show you that briefly. But let's start with 6 divided by 10. Notice I have 6 and it is in the ones place. So I'm going to write my 6 ones. I'm dividing by 10. Remember with division, which way are we shifting? Right. Remember, when we get to the right, we are getting smaller. So my 6 has to shift to the right. I'm already at the decimal. Remember, we like that 0 in the ones place, but we don't have to have it. So we know that 6 divided by 10 gives us 6/10, because we shifted to the right one time. Okay. This time, we're going to take those same 6 ones, but I want to divide it by 100. Notice now I have 2 zeros. Only thing that changes, I'm still going to the right because it's still division. So the only thing that's going to change is instead of me shifting one time, now I have to shift 2 times. 2 zeros, 2 shifts. So that means that 6 has to go 1, 2. So it is now in the hundreds place. Let me repeat what I just did. I need to divide this 6 by 100. Notice 100 has 2 zeros. So that tells me I need 2 hops. So not only did I hop to the tenths place, I also had to hop to the hundreds place. I set my 6 in the hundreds place. I'm not at that decimal, so I need a 0 to get me there. And remember, we just like a 0 in the ones place. So that tells me that 6 ones divided by 100 gives me 6 hundredths. Now let's take that same 6 this time we're going to divide it by 1,000. You should see a pattern by now. When we divided by 10, we shifted to the right one time. When we divided by 100, we shifted to the right 2 times. So if we divide by 1,000, we're going to shift to the right 3 times. So now I'm going to take my 6 and hop it 1 place value, 2 place values, 3 place values. So that 6 has to stick in the thousandths place. Let me repeat that. Because I'm dividing by 1,000, which has 3 zeros, I need 3 shifts to the right. So I shifted my 6, 1, 2, 3 place values to the right. I'm not at the decimal, so in order to get there, I need zeros. So I know that 6 divided by 1,000 gives me 6 thousandths. So basically, with multiplying powers of 10, we're shifting to the left. And with dividing powers of 10, we're shifting to the right. Okay. Let's try some multiplication with 100 and 1,000. I start once again by putting my number on the place value chart. So my number is 2 and 43 hundredths. Notice all I did was put my digits in their place values. The 2 is in the ones place, the 4 is in the tenths place, the 3 is in the hundreds place. I'm going to multiply by 10. Remember, when we multiply, we are shifting to the left. When I move to the left, the place values get larger. So I'm multiplying by 10, which has 1 0. So every digit has to shift 1 time to the left. So my 2 is shifting 1 time to the left. My 4 is shifting 1 time to the left. My 3 is shifting 1 time to the left. So I know that 2 and 43 hundredths times 10 gives me 24 and 3 hundredths. Notice each digit shifted 1 time to the left. Let's try another. We're gonna still use our same 2 and 4300s. This time we're gonna multiply it by 100. We now have 2 zeros, and those 2 zeros tell me to shift my digits 2 times to the left. So now my 2 is gonna go 1, 2. Notice I hop 2 place values, 1, 2. My 4 has to go 2 place values, 1, 2. My 3 has to go 2 place values, 1, 2. Everything has now shifted 2 times to the left. So I know that 2 and 4300 times 100 gives me 243. Okay, we're going to use our same number, and this time we're going to multiply it by 1000. So we got 2 and 4300. We're multiplying by 1000. By now you have caught the pattern. When we multiplied by 10, we moved 1 time to the left. When we multiplied by 100, we moved 2 times to the left. When we multiply by 1000, we're going to move 3 times to the left. So I'm going to take each digit 3 places to the left. So that's 1, 2, 3. Then my 4 goes 1, 2, 3. Then my 3 goes 1, 2, 3. Notice I'm not at the decimal, so what gets me there? A 0. So I know that 2 and 4300 times 1000 gives me 2430. Okay. So far our patterns have been when we divide, we're shifting to the right. When we multiply, we're shifting to the left. Our number of shifts depends on the zeros in my power of 10. If I'm multiplying by 10, I shift 1 time. If I'm multiplying by 100, I shift 2 times. If I'm multiplying by 1000, I shift 3 times. Okay. Our last set of problems, we are now going to do division with 10, 100, and 1000. We're starting with the whole number 745. So I'm simply going to write each digit in its place value. So I got 745. I'm dividing by 10, which you now know that division moves us to the right, and that 10 tells me to move to the right 1 time. So everything is going to move to the right 1 time. So my 4 moves 1 time to the right. My 7 moves 1 time to the right. So I know that 745 divided by 10 gives me 74 and 5/10. Everything got smaller by a power of 10. Let's use that same number. And this time, 745, we're going to divide it by 100. Well, we already know that division takes us to the right. This time with 100, I don't have 1 0, I have 2 zeros. So that means I need to move to the right 2 times. So each digit is going to shift right 2 times. So my 5 is going to go 1, 2. My 4 is going to go 1, 2. My 7 is going to go 1, 2. Notice my decimal's right here in the middle, so I do not need any zeros. So that shows me that 745 divided by 100 gives me 7 and 4500. Okay, let's try that same number. So we got 745. This time we're going to divide it by 1000. Well, as we've discussed in this lesson, when we divide, we're moving to the right on that place value chart. But this time we have 1000, which has 3 zeros. So it's telling me to move right 3 times. So all of my digits have to shift to the right 3 times. So I'm going to take my 5 and shift it 1, 2, 3 and sit it down. My 4 has to shift 1, 2, 3 and sit it down. My 7 has to shift 1, 2, 3, set it down. I'm already at my decimal. We just like a 0 in the ones place. I don't need it, but I like it. So that gives me my answer. So we know that 745 divided by 1,000 gives us 745 thousandths. Okay? So that concludes our lesson for today. Remember that in this lesson, we learned to reason concretely and pictorially using place value understanding to relate adjacent base 10 units from millions to thousands, which, as I told you, simply means we learned that when we divide, we move to the right on that place value chart, and when we multiply, we move to the left on that place value chart. The number of zeros tells me how many moves to make. 10 tells me to shift 1 time. 100 tells me to shift 2 times. 1,000 tells me to shift 3 times. Until our next lesson,